Mrs. Arthur and Mr. Bailey should be joining. Jean had been in the hospital, but I understand we talked to Larry today that she's over at Larry's house this morning, so they should be coming in here in a minute. And Kim just joined us, so other than Mr. Tolliver and Jean and Larry, I think we're good.
So do we have everybody, Doug, that you expected, or are we still expecting somebody that was?
Well, I'm still expecting Mr. Tolliver and Jean and Mr. Bailey to call in.
Okay.
So I think, we're at the appointed hour, though, if you want to go ahead and get started, and we have a quorum.
Let's go ahead and get rolling. It. Then you can add them to whatever the attendance is. But welcome, everybody. June 18th, 2020 KRT board meeting. First thing we need to do is take a roll call, so we'll have some idea of who's here and also who's in the room with you, Doug.
I'm Tom Tolliver.
Oh, there's Mr. Tolliver. Good morning.
Morning.
You look like you're getting ready to go to SpaceX with that headset on.
Oh, yes, I can hear better at my old age.
All right, Doug, you want to do the roll call?
Yeah, I'm going to just go through my list here and then just say yes when you're in or raise your hand. I've got from staff, we've got Jamie, Clyde, Scott, Travis is in the room, Jacob and Mick. And do I have any other staff that I didn't mention? Chris. Baldwin. And then Brett Meadows is here from the union. And I see Beth Amandus is here as our attorney. And for board members, Mr. Koval, present. Mr. Sutphin is present. Ms. Holmes is present. Here. Mr. Hicks is present. Mr. Casebolt is present. Mr. White is present. Mr. Tolliver is present. Mr. Snodgrass is present. Ms. Gaynor is present. Mr. Goldman is present. And I don't think we've got the other ones called in yet. So the only people missing are Jean Arthur and Mr. Larry Bailey, or Mr. Bailey.
Okay. Well, I think as in months past, I'm going to have Doug kind of take care of it so we're not talking over top of each other. So you want to get started on approval of the minutes and going through the agenda, Doug?
Yeah, we provided everybody a copy of the minutes. Did anybody have any changes to the minutes from last month's meeting?
I read the minutes. They look good. I move they be approved.
Thank you.
I second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, minutes will be attached to the packet. Scott, if you want to take care of the financials.
The financials were mailed out in the packet, and again, still not good, but that's what we kind of expect where we are right now. But Schedule 2 on the statement of revenue and expenses for May, operating revenues, the $118,903, and operating expenses of $1,199,997. For a year-to-date comparison for the 11 months periods, if you want to look on Schedule 3, the comparative analysis, operating revenues for this current period is $1,740,201 compared to the previous year's $2,060,553. And on the expense side, a little lower this year with $11,416,227. Makes a little higher compared to the $11,395,301. Schedule 4 for the 4-week moving totals. Not a good trend there on the revenue, down 49%. And on the ridership, anywhere from 41 to 50%. For For the actual revenue there on 4B from the fare box, slight uptick there. We got the 15,000, went up to 19,000 this most recent week there, June 4th. But then the averages typically have been between 25 and 28,000.
And obviously June, that's the first week of June. We always have a little uptick in the first of the month.
For the actual counts there on 4C from the GFI, our farebox system, for May 2020, total ridership was 71,872 compared to the previous year's May of 136,908. That decrease of 46% or 63,000 some riders. $4D, just pass usage, consistent there, just under that 70%. Just statistical analysis there on Schedule 5. Average passengers a day was about 2,870 compared to the previous May of 5,097. And just an average count for the month of the 72,953 compared to the previous 133,23. And Schedule 6, like it would have been nice if it had been an increase, but what we anticipated there with the decrease in the rate this year, the percentage we were getting, shouldn't be anything big coming in June. But when we include the regular monthly June amount of the 157,000, year to date, we're at 4.27% decrease from the previous year, which what was that?
That's what we expect.
100,000, but that was again where we had that trend early in the year where it was still a little bit higher. It did balance out, so that should be consistent. Then for the next year we should really be flat for a slight increase if things hold the same.
So Scott, is the 157 just a placeholder right now so we can kind of see what the year end will look like?
No, that's the actual number because they make that deposit typically first, second, third of the month, or maybe a couple of days later. But if I get it prior to the board packet going out, I include that actual number. So that is what we received.
Is there any indication that fewer people are paying their taxes right now because of COVID and that there's a bigger decrease temporarily that'll bounce back in late summer when people start getting back to normal habits?
There hasn't been any discussion in terms, with what they send there from the sheriff's office. I was making my adjusted entry for next year, getting planned for the audit, where I'll see what our anticipated unpayment amounts will be, the uncollectible portion, and it right now it was a slight decrease, wasn't anything huge change, so an adjustment need to be made, but the bulk of those payments are being made. Was it February, March?
Yeah,
which was kind of on the onset of this. So really, that come next September, that's when you might see more of that number coming into play. What we have records of right now, I don't think we can really make a determination on that.
Yeah,
okay.
Todd,
Can I throw a comment?
Oh, go ahead.
Can I throw a comment in real quick on that?
Yeah.
This is Dave. Our numbers are down substantially too on that, and we're speculating that if you remember, the governor pushed back payments on that till July or June. I think June the 1st, from April till June. So we're hoping that's what the cause of it is.
But I don't.
Todd,
Oh, sure.
Todd Jason Ogres, sorry. Same thing we're having in our municipality. We're way down on the county tax collection.
Okay. Well, that'd be something to keep an eye on then.
Yeah, and when we budgeted at the beginning, or actually we anticipated a 4% decrease when we went into this year, because our rate went from 47.5% of the proceeds to 43% of the proceeds, 43.5. So we did kind of expect that. I think, Scott, a lot of the business taxes were due. March 30th or March 1st was that deadline before you started paying the full boat. You got discounted before that. So, but I'm sure there are the collections are down. I don't know how it's going to affect us. And sometimes we get after the board meeting or right before the board meeting, we get some small checks that come in. But usually in June, in years past, we've only gotten about 200,000 total. Isn't that about right?
What numbers there? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at what we got, so it's really not that far off. I think we're pretty close, and was a surprise. I do want to point out that $105,000 of the passenger fare revenue lost was that contract with the state. We're down 300,000 overall, but 105 of that was that contract with the state they canceled last July. So that was revenue we never did, and we did not budget that revenue this year when we adopted a budget last meeting.
But there's a corresponding savings to that revenue
That's
as well.
Correct. Right. That we were basically doing that at cost, so it should basically be a wash. If there are any other comments on the financials, if not, we'll attach them to the minutes and have them kept on file. I think Mr. Bailey and Miss Arthur's joined us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, and I'm glad you're doing better and out of the hospital.
Thank you. I don't feel out of the woods, but I'm out of the hospital.
Okay, great. We don't have any unbudgeted invoices in excess of $5,000. The self-insurance report under old business was included in your package. We did have a small little incident on Monday, and I've already been contacted by a lawyer, but it's a pretty minor. A bus curbed itself, and somebody's claiming they are hurt substantially, and already went to the lawyers. CAT operations, again, CAT has been down. It's slowly starting to pick up too. We still are don't expect ridership to jump back. It has been slightly increasing, but not nearly enough. We expect that this trend is going to last a while. I'm not sure when or if we'll ever be back to normal and things like that. So it's going to be interesting moving forward. So between CAD and our regular operations, we're doing the best we can and still cleaning. The vehicles, doing all that. I might as well, the National Guard is going to cease operation of their hydrogen peroxide cleaning thing. They've been doing 5 buses of ours a day. That ceases on the 24th of this month. We're still scheduled until the last day. As a thank you to the National Guard, KRT provided lunch to all their workers yesterday or Tuesday, and thanked them. And at the end of this, we'll make sure we give them some proper attention and things like that. Them and Yeager Airport for including us in that program. It's been very beneficial. I plan to keep on every weekend having a company come in and sanitize the buses. I think we're probably going to maybe keep that program going on indefinitely, but definitely for sure during the state of emergency with the COVID. But I think it's a good program to continue. It's not that expensive, but I think it.
Yeah, we've also there are some similar to what the Guard was doing. Some spray units that are portable, that are fairly affordable. I mean, we're looking. Chris is getting some information with those, so that way it would be at our convenience when we could do that and could continue the at least monthly or something. But they're still looking into getting that, so our cleaners can be able to do that.
Yeah, we're trying to do everything we can. We'll probably have to replace the curtains again here in the next few weeks. We've replaced them once. After about 6 weeks, they start to get cloudy and all that kind of stuff. Hard to see. And then also we ordered the West Virginia Public Transportation Department or Division is doing a group bulk purchase of shields for our cutaways and cat vans. There are fold-up shields. They don't come all the way to the floor because there's just not a way to do that in those vehicles, but it does come down and blocks basically down to the shoulder of the driver, so the driver can, and then we'll remove the curtains from them. those vehicles and use that. They fold up in emergency if they need to get out that way, but they usually on those vehicles egress by the door, not through the vehicle by the driver's door, not the passenger door. So that's been that order was going out today. Not sure how long that will take, but we'll install those as soon as they come in. The union wanted us to find some full-length ones. They're just not available for those type vehicles.
Doug?
Yes.
Hey, this is Bob Sutton. Along those lines, and this is probably a question for the lawyer, is there any requirement that passengers wear masks?
No, there's not, Bob. And actually, we received from the Federal Transit Administration 2,500 cloth masks last week, and we have plenty of masks here at KRT for our drivers, for our employees. We've made them available to them. We've also now making our mask available to the general public. When they come in to get a bus ticket here or at the transit mall, we offer them a mask. But to be honest with you, most of them refuse it. We don't have a lot of people taking us up on it. I know the county just got 500 of these same masks from the state emergency or FEMA. Somehow it went through the state. And I talked to or emailed Jennifer yesterday, told her that we had 2,500 of them, and to coordinate to make sure that we get them. There's been no federal, state, local, or county regulation to say people have to wear a mask in public.
I understand that. Now, if they don't have to wear a mask, my actual concern is the driver himself, or
Yes.
herself, whatever. That do they have the best mask that we can get them to protect them? If the public won't wear a mask, we have to protect the driver somehow.
Yes,
I know the screen's there. I love the screen. I think it's great, but you're on that bus all day long with people, and the screen's nice when they come and go, but you need something for the duration of the day.
Yeah, the drivers can get either a cloth mask or a surgical mask. There were some N95 masks, but to be honest with you, most people doesn't like them because they're just too hot.
They're too hard to breathe in. That's what.
Yeah. I would say 25 to 30% of our drivers are wearing the masks. They're available. Some of them feel comfortable with just the curtain, and they don't wear it. They have a mask with them if they get off the bus or have to get on to load a wheelchair or something like that. But they're available to them, and we're giving them what they need. The only thing that we haven't been able to get, and I think I have a solution for that, is the small bottles of hand sanitizer. But I was in Kroger's yesterday, and they had tons of them. So I plan on talking to Clyde today about going up. We've got some on back order from our normal suppliers, but we can't get that. In. So we'll probably just go to Kroger's and buy, 100 bottles of hand sanitizers, give them to the drivers, and then in a couple weeks, buy 100 more if that's what we have to do.
I'm just saying, whatever it takes to protect the driver, if they're willing to drive.
Our number one concern is the safety of our drivers and passengers. Obviously, I can't force the passengers to wear masks. We still have on the bus, on the head signs, when you see a bus, it still says essential riders only. We're still not promoting, everybody in the world jumping on the bus to go running around. It's the sign of the times. Unfortunately, once things started opening up, people think this is over. It's not over.
Thank you. I appreciate the info.
Well, since we're talking about that, I know we sent you a copy of the letter from the union thanking you guys for the pandemic pay and the bonus pay. And again, Brett, thank you for the letter. I talked to Mr. Sayre and personally thanked him yesterday. If you recall, when you adopted the pandemic pay, it was to run till the end of the state emergency or June 30th. And at June 30th, it then became at the discretion of, I guess, KRT management. My recommendation to you is that we continue to pay it at least until our next board meeting, which would take it through about July 20. Our board meeting's on the 22nd, but it would take it through the payroll ending that week. And at that point, we reevaluate where we are and make a decision for the next month. And we just do this on a month-by-month basis. But I feel strongly that we're not out of the woods yet, and I would like to have your concurrence with that decision. That is my recommendation. That's what I planned on implementing. And Beth, I think the agreement that we signed and the board adopted gives me that authority to do that. Is that correct?
As far as I'm concerned, well, here's what we'll do. I'll make a motion that we, this thought Sutton, that we can continue with the pay until next board meeting, the hazardous pay. Is that all right, Doug?
I'm gonna defer to the attorney. Beth, I can't hear you, Beth. She's got a technical glitch here.
I think she just pulled out her state code. She's doing some research.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well,
we'll come back to that. Well, here she is. And we'll come back to that in a few minutes. Whether we need a motion or not, I'm not sure we do, Mr. Sutphin. I think the way it was written is it was at our discretion at that point. So, but we'll let her check on that. I want to give you a little bit of, when you're ready, Beth. We still can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Your mute button's off, but we still can't hear you. Todd, do you want me to?
Maybe she wants to call in on her phone in a minute, and we can do it that way.
Okay. Let me jump to the transit mall update while we're waiting on that to get resolved, so we don't keep you all longer than we did. On Tuesday, we interviewed and ranked and listened to presentation of the 5 firms that submitted their qualifications and their interest in doing the work for KRT at the transit mall. The committee was Eric Hicks and Todd, myself and Scott, and then Chris Knox from the city of Charleston. We have ranked the firms and cumulatively added up the scores, and I have set a meeting for next week to actually begin the negotiation of the scope. And again, the way this process works is we requested statements of interest and qualifications. At that point, we listen to presentations. We then rank the firms. Then we go to the top ranked firm and try to negotiate a scope and a price that we both can agree on. If we can't, we then go to the second ranked firm to negotiate a price and a scope that we can agree on. It's done by the West Virginia Code. It's 5G is a section of the code. We will be next week just kind of laying out the groundwork of what we expect in a scope of work, and how much money we have, what they will do with it, and we'll negotiate it down. And hopefully we can have those negotiations completed by our next board meeting, at which that point the board would award a contract with a firm. Eric and Todd, do you have any comments that you want to make?
I think the only thing that might be significant to add is that one, we dealt with all local firms, so it was good to see some familiar faces that a lot of us knew and that we have some confidence in. All of them are capable folks. One of the things that they all reiterated is that there's contractors that are able and willing right now to get involved in some projects. So it could be an opportune time for us to get the work done at a pretty reasonable cost if we can do it in a decent time frame. For Doug, question for you: did you alert the 4 other folks that we had made a selection so that they were aware of what the outcome was?
I have not yet. I told them I would do that before noon today, but
Okay.
obviously, you know, I have to keep the doors open to all those firms, because if we can't negotiate this down through the process, which I feel that between the top 2 firms, we should be able to come to an agreement with one or the other of them. But
Well, they're familiar with the process. Like, they'll be surprised to hear that they weren't the number one choice.
yeah, I told
That's
them
on-
I would let them know by noon today, so I plan on sending an email out this afternoon or before I leave, or call them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't have anything else to add.
I have reached out to the city about about having with the city manager about having them lease the property that we would be building on to us, so that protects our investment. You know, if we're going to invest that kind of money downtown Charleston, things like that, we should have the protection that you know, 3 or 4 years from now, somebody can't kick us out and take our building that we build. So with that, that's all I have on the Transit Mall update. Beth, I think you've called in, right?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. I don't know what happened there, but I did look back at the MOU that the board approved and can confirm that the pandemic pay bonus is at the discretion of the board, so it can be extended.
Okay. So we had a motion from Mr. Sutton. Do I need a second? Okay, Mr. Snodgrass has raised his hand indicating a second. All those in favor of continuing it through and reevaluating it at the next board meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. All right. New business, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, because both those are his things, so you can come over here and sit in the hot seat and do that. I do want to, before I move, let you know that next month we have election of officers and things like that, so July is an important meeting. Hopefully, maybe we can meet in person. If not, we'll continue to do it this way.
Okay, if you guys want to look at, I think we had a copy of the budget amendments from what we made for the last year's 2020 budget. If you want to take a look there in that middle column, the one with the change, you'll notice those top 4 are all under the labor part. And we knew we were under on most of this through the year. We thought we'd be okay with that one $4 pay, but when we had that additional, that net $1,000 amount, you know, that was going to probably put us over. So we, you know, would like to make these adjustments to make sure that we do stay under for the year. We can take most of that out of the hospitalization, the sick pay, uniform allowance, where we have in the past we typically have like one class of 5 people. We've had to have smaller classes, and where it's been spaced out a little bit, we brought in some more numbers, so that was just a slight increase with it. Contract maintenance will probably be okay, but just in case something unexpected comes up here in June. And 2 of these, the custodial and the tires, at the end of last year when we were making our projections, there was some hold up on some of the payments, so we didn't really make accruals for those entries. So really we were paying part of last year's on those, so you know, we've got to get those covered now. And then on the insurance side there, where we have the bill for next year, you know, we are making that accrual. It's a little bit higher next year, so that's why that slight increase is to cover it. But nothing really huge amounts. And again, fuel, where we were way under, where we didn't have that fuel contract, we knew we had a cushion there to cover most of those other material related items. Does anybody have any questions with any of the adjustments? It looks like that need to be made. No. Yeah, overall we'll still be well under budget, even with that additional amount on that pandemic pay where we paid a little bit on the tax side to the county. You know, we haven't started receiving any of that money yet. We're holding off on it until next year. But even with it, we'll still be $400,000 or $500,000. But that's before any adjustments might need to be made in terms of the audit, where that stuff will be kind of after year end.
So are there any questions about the budget amendments that Scott's made? Because we will need a budget or a motion to approve those. Someone would like to make a motion if there's no more discussion.
I move they be approved.
Okay, so it sounds like Mr. Coble made the motion.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Snodgrass seconded it. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the budget, by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Scott.
Okay. Next one we have is our for our audit selection. Kind of one of these gets held up. Again, the COVID had a little bit to do with that in terms of the timing. They kind of wait till the end because most people aren't ready to get everything set up. But with our the amount of fuel we have, it's a material number. We have to have the auditors on site here on that July 1st for that observation, and sometimes with a little bit of the inventory. And typically it's going to be a 2 or 3 year. This year, for some reason, it was only 1. I followed up with them, and they apologized. That was an error on their side, but they wouldn't be able to repost it until late. It was middle or late June, and by the time we would have to get it sent out, turned around, it would be after that July 1st time. So we were going to just go with the 1 year. We had our committee. I think it was Todd helped Doug, Jacob, and I, and there's a scoring system that the Chief Audit Division requires you to use. And a lot of it hinges on price. Once that calculation's made, it essentially threw out, we had 3 possible people, people put bids in for the proposal. I mean, it threw one of them out because they were just way too high. And I know in our discussions in the past, we've had a little bit of, not reluctance, but with the firm we've used, again, you kind of get what you pay for. So we do have the Harm Lester. They came in at $15,000. It was the same dollar amount that they've had for the past 5 years. I think they've had it over 2 different contracts. The Brown and Edwards we'd used in the past at Gibbons and K-Wash, they came in $34,000, which was just way too high. I mean, no other adjustment could be made to get them in. But the other company was Settle and Stoniker, and they came in at the same price where they had bid a couple years ago, which was the same place Brown and Edwards was at, which was about the $23,000. And again, that was the number we had anticipated based on conversations we've had in the past where you all wanted to look in a different direction and get another set of eyes on it. That was in our budget right now, $25,000. It would require we're allowed to award up to 5 bonus points, which we typically don't do, but we have the discretion to do that. And before we would make that, the audit committee make that recommendation, we wanted to get the board's opinion, input, to see what direction they would like to go with it. And again, next year we were kind of assured we would have a 3-year deal. We would budget for it accordingly, but we're just looking at this 1 year. Do we want to stay with who we've had at the $15,000? And again, they do enough for the job that's required. Is that good enough? I mean, they've had some difficulty in the accounting field. People kind of object with that just low price. And they've had a couple things thrown out, but they're definitely qualified. So, I mean, either way, we'll be covered. Just need to see what direction y'all want to go.
So I'll just kind of, go ahead, Valerie.
Sorry, Scott. Sorry, Todd. Scott, I was wondering, how long have we used this current?
It was
this current firm?
It's been 5 years because for the again they go between usually 3 years or 2 years on most of our contracts, and the first year was a 2. We had some difficulty with them. People they've had here assigned. The guy we had last year was great, but he wasn't a CPA, but he's more than qualified to do the work. And again, in some states like in Ohio, they require a new auditor every 10 years, just so you don't have the same people looking at the numbers and really looking at the same thing year in, year out.
And just for background, in the past, during the board presentations, we've had numerous questions, some of which have led to request for revisions in the work that was put before us, even just for typos, but it seemed material to the work that they were conducting. So when we budgeted, the board was in agreement that we might be looking at doing something that was going to cost a little bit more. I didn't anticipate, and Scott didn't either. We had no way to know that the auditor's office was going to hit us with a 1-year contract, in which case that premium ballooned, because nobody can have a learning curve over 1 year because there's no guarantee they'll have a contract after that. So the question is, do we want to shift gears at this point? No, we're paying a little bit of a premium to get a different firm, but also because of the 1-year contract, or stick it out for a year with these folks and then try to get a better price for the future with the 3-year contract that should be at a lower price per year.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. The last year when it was done, Suttle and Brown Edwards both were at about that 23,000, and that was the same number. Suttle came in with this year. They'd indicated they didn't try to make it any lower, and also, on average, you're looking at about a 30% increase that first year to do it. So again, that price kind of held steady. I think Brown Edwards factored in that 1 year, and some other stuff increased theirs.
So you think Suttle and Stoneker's bid would have been basically the same per year had it been for a 3-year term? Based
on past history, when we did this 3 years ago, both Brown and Edwards and Suttle had the exact. Suttle was at 23,000, the same number they bid this time, and Brown Edwards was like 23.5.
Okay. Any strong opinions from the board, or opinions at all?
No.
I mean, my opinion is I think that we should go with not the same people we've been using. I think it makes sense to get a new perspective and bring new folks in. So I think that Suttle and Stoneker makes sense.
I agree with Valerie.
Okay. I mean,
okay.
Todd, I had just one question. I may have missed it there. Was the one that we had previous, were they included in this audit, the audit process?
Yes, they were the one that came in low, same price they've had the last 5 years. And that's their reputation, to come in low. But again, they're qualified. The state, they have to go through a process to be certified to do these audits, and they meet that threshold. But yeah, they're the one, and then Suttle are the two only ones we can look at, because again, price-wise, with the calculation, the formula you have to use, it was like an 8-point swing, and there's no way Brown Edwards would even be eligible. Or yeah,
right. And I'm familiar with those audits, and they're they're pretty detailed on the questions, and it's all number driven.
And both firms did assure they would have a partner on site, which for the presentation to the board, which in the past, Barnhill Lester has kind of passed on that.
And that's one thing in the quote, Jay, is that they'll tell you who it is that's going to do certain functions, and the skill and qualifications of most of the employees on the Suttle and Stoneker bid were in excess of the skill and qualifications of the staff members that Ballester was using for the same service.
I see.
So there's definitely the bids are interesting too. Ballester just puts out a base hourly rate that's, I think the highest was $150 an hour, while Suttle and Stoneker puts out an enormous hourly rate of like $350 for their highest person, but then they assign about a 30% discount to the final price. So they all treat it a little bit differently as to how they quote those things. Obviously, the bottom line is all we care about, because it's a fixed price. but I think that you end up with more qualified people from the subtle firm doing the hands-on work. And, you know, to Scott's credit, not everybody's going to want an outside person coming in and questioning and eating up all your time and maybe poking holes in the way that you do things. And he's wanting to get a different perspective so that the authority's covered. I mean, we had a theft situation in years past, and you know, maybe that's something that would have been through a proper audit would have been detected. I don't know, but that happened, and we didn't find out about it except through happenstance.
Right. I'm fine with Sutler Stoniker for sure.
I mean, does anybody have any disagreement, or everybody's in that agreement? Because again, we really don't need a motion for it. The audit committee just has to make that final, but reward the bonus points. If y'all are good with that, we can get that finalized, and then I got to get them contact, have them here on site. 'Cause it still takes at least a week to have everything finalized by the state office, but we can have them here, and we can go from there.
Looks like the agenda. Well, we need to make a motion.
We do have to make a motion.
The recommendation, they adopt the recommendation. Yeah, you guys will have to make a motion to adopt the recommendation of the committee. The committee was just holding off on until it got some input from the board on whether or not to award the 5 bonus points that are allowed under this bidding process. So it sounds like there's no objection to doing that. So I guess, Todd, our recommendation as a committee would be to award the Settle and Stoniker, and we'd seek a motion from the board to do that.
I make that motion that we go ahead and approve Sutler and Stoniker or the board to go ahead and work with Sutler and Stoniker to do the audit.
Second.
So motion and approval. Is there any further discussion about Eric's motion to engage Suttle and Stoniker to do the audit on behalf of the board? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Do we have anything else, Scott?
Any other business, Doug?
I don't think so. Again, I want to thank the union. We do have the COVID pay is kind of ending, and we have received a couple people back to work. We still have 8. We're still short 8 drivers due to that. We are hoping. Well, that's not the right word. We kind of expect that 1 or 2 of them may never come back. From some indications we've got in discussions with them. But we hope to be able to return to full service. I talked to Brett this morning about that, and I'll get with Mr. Sayre and about that. But returning back to full service, it's going to take 3 weeks to get that implemented, the process that we have to go through under our collective bargaining agreement. We're talking about doing some things to maybe expedite that. So as soon as we have the bodies back, we can get back to our regular service as quickly as possible. I anticipate we'll know more about the 10th of July, but there's a way we can cut 5 days at least out of that process if we can agree to do that. And of course, Mr. Sayre's out of town today working at another property, so I haven't had a chance to get into all those details. But we are trying to get back to regular service. We're still running Saturday service as soon as possible. It's better off if we do. Again, we spread the people out a little bit more. Plus, it's more convenient to our riders if we do get back to regular service. And other than that, we don't have anything else. We hope that you all stay safe, and we still look forward to the day where we can all meet again and be together.
To that end, I think before the next board meeting, it'd be interesting if you could poll the board members to see who is willing to come to a live board meeting, if it's appropriate and conditions are satisfactory to attempt it.
Yeah.
Just to see if there's any apprehension. I'd really like to return to a live board meeting, but I don't want to do it and jeopardize someone's health or jeopardize somebody's comfort level.
We'll do that, and also we could always do a combination of both, that those that feel comfortable could come in and those that don't, we could still do it video, provide that. We have technology in place now to do that, so it wouldn't be a problem to do that. And we can keep staff out and have them call in. I think if we were talking about the 12 board members and the attorney and myself and Scott, there's almost enough room to social distance in here, but we'd still be a little tight.
Well, but we can't exclude somebody, so we need to make sure we do it properly. Speaking of which, does Travis have any email questions? And do we know how many viewers there are on YouTube?
As I look to Travis's.
No email questions. And count is 6.
There's 6 people viewing through YouTube, and there's nobody has sent in an email to KVRTA at Ride on KRT to make a comment or to ask a question of the board.
Okay.
And probably if we do this, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just was going to appreciate everybody's participation and patience while we go through this. It's not ideal, but at least we're conducting business and making decisions, and everything's moving forward.
Yeah, and July is a mandatory meeting under the state code, as you know. July, October, January, and April. Yeah, and May we have to adopt the budget. But there are 4 months that we do have to meet no matter what. So please, everybody, July 20 or July 16th? I thought it was 24th. Is that a typo? 3rd Thursday in July. I think that's a typo on my board packet. So we'll get back together. Appreciate it. Stay safe. And Todd, I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
I think we just